Men's Minute modcast with his mates, Perry and Sadia. Episode 178.
Time for topic number 2. And you might have seen in the news around when all of these LLMs were being pulled together, the open AIs and all the big LLMs, Google, Meta, etc., thought it would be a great idea just to actually start scraping the internet, right, to train these models. And obviously, there's been a big backlash from creators, artists, musicians, etc. And they're trying to tweak the laws, aren't they, to say, yeah, if it's in the public domain, then that's fair game and we can use that. And you might have seen recently, like Cloudflare have introduced this thing that people can put on their websites, which stops the bots to automatically scrape unless they pay. So they can build enough funds to actually, so the people of those websites can actually get some money back. And that was a bit of a tenuous link to something that me and Satya were discussing the other day, in terms of Prada got themselves into a bit of hot water because they copied a very traditional Indian design and didn't give any credits to that particular region of India. But Satya, if I can pass it on to you to actually stop me being all cryptic about it and tell us about that news story.
Yes, I think what Prada did was to not only copy but just take exactly how there's an Indian footwear. It's called chappal, or it's the sandal. It is a touring chappal, and it is called Kolhapuri. So it is dedicated to a place called Kolhapur in Maharashtra in India, and that is a staple footwear for most of the people in this region. Of course, with more and more companies like Birkenstock and all, you tend to adapt your footwear. But this is something that is traditionally worn across weddings, normal days, be it. And then Prada takes it, does not even remotely even say that it is from India, or let alone from which particular city it is coming from. And that gladly has created a backlash. That is something that, because of the internet, it spread so fast that people across the world were talking about it, and Prada has to give it the due recognition. I think otherwise, imagine if we were not an internet, they would have copied, and maybe many years later Indians would have realized, and then maybe they would have said who copied from whom, and the old saga continues. I think it's the same with something they called as Swedish scarf or Scandinavian scarf or something like that, which is also very similar to how many Indians wear a longer piece of fabric on the body. It's called dupatta or chunri. But I think this has been quite a lot of controversy also around, like, what do you call a copyright, or what do you call something is copied? Because even for Louis Vuitton or one of these companies, their classical symbol, I think it's a flower or something like that, it comes from a very old architecture in Indonesia, in Colombia. I think it's Cambodia. It's where Angkor Wat is, and people are like, okay, if you are selling it at such a high price, from where you have taken it, give some money to them as well, right? Like there has to be some contribution to where it was originally inspired from. I think this saga will continue, because with OpenAI doing what with Ghibli Studios and so many other inspirations, and blatantly doing it without having to contribute to things, I think it's pretty nasty.
I think it's an interesting movement where Hermes copied something, and now there is a lot of recognition because they copied something. And that's interesting as well, thanks to the connections we all have. And I think there is a movement where it's becoming all more fair from the perspective of the bigger audience. And I saw somewhere that, we need 25% of the population to move something forward. And it feels like that we're moving towards the 25%, that this would not have happened like 5 years ago. People couldn't care less, right? And like, whatever. And now they do care and more, which is absolutely fantastic. So it is beautiful to see. And I also strongly believe, going back to education, that we're allowed to make mistakes, and not all mistakes are on purpose. And sometimes we're humans, make mistakes, and it happens. And it's beautiful to see a response like that that it has a very positive upside to it. And I think there's a shift in the world slowly that maybe creates new kinds of system thinking, that it's becoming more human systems rather than recreated system. This is how it works and everybody has to obey. I'm very positive about that. So listening to you, Satya, I'm like, interesting. It's so cool that it's going so fast, that the whole world responds so fast immediately to Ebers saying, hey, listen, you can do this. Good job. I like that. Yeah.
I like how you have said that because they copied and because they were such a huge noise that it got the recognition it deserves.
Yeah.
I think without otherwise, maybe it would be in a local somewhere and beyond.
No. If they would have done a good job, Hermes, and give the actual credits, nobody would have cared, and there would not be any attention whatsoever.
Yeah.
So, do you
That,
think it's a marketing campaign?
No, I
Sorry.
don't think so. That would be too smart.
yeah. No,
Because you can't control how you fuck up things. You cannot control the narrative of the bigger audience in how to respond on something that goes wrong. Thank God we can't control that. I know companies are trying to control that. There are companies like that are actually focused on that. But anyway, yeah.